What a wild day in São Paulo. The first day of the Brazilian Grand Prix weekend turned into total chaos, and honestly, no one expected it to unfold this way. From Verstappen losing his cool over Red Bull's setup to Hamilton fighting the car just to stay in control, Interlagos delivered one of those unpredictable Fridays that remind us why this track is so special and so brutal. Let's start with Max Verstappen. The defending champion was furious after sprint qualifying, calling the car undrivable and shaking his head in disbelief over team radio. He went off on how Red Bull had completely missed the setup window. Too much understeer in the fast sections, no traction out of the slower corners, and a balance that just didn't make sense. You could hear the frustration boiling over in his voice. He even said it felt like they were running two different cars between sessions. For someone who's usually so calm and analytical, that outburst told you everything. And you know what made it worse? Red Bull expected Brazil to be a smooth weekend. Interlagos has always been a strong track for them, but the temperature swings, the bumpy surface, and the unpredictable grip caught them out badly. Verstappen's data showed massive variations between sectors. Great top speed, but horrible mid-corner balance. And when you combine that with the tight sprint schedule, there's no time to fix anything. So yeah, his anger was justified. Meanwhile, over at Mercedes, Lewis Hamilton was dealing with his own nightmare. The 7-time champion said he had no grip at all. You could see it on track. The car sliding through the center S, struggling to hook up the rear end and losing time in every traction zone. Mercedes tried a more aggressive setup, hoping to get the tyres into the right window for the sprint, but it backfired. Instead of finding pace, they just made the car unpredictable. Then came the yellow flag chaos. Charles Leclerc spun in the middle sector right when Hamilton was on a flying lap, and that killed Lewis's best run. He lifted off to respect the yellow, but it completely ruined his time. Hamilton was visibly frustrated, shaking his head as he crossed the line. After the session, there were even stewards' questions about whether anyone had failed to slow down enough under yellows. Ferrari and Mercedes engineers both looked tense, waiting for clarity, but fortunately, no major penalties followed. Still, that single moment summed up both teams' messy day, one car spinning, the other losing a lap because of it. And let's not forget how quickly the track evolved. Between Q1 and Q3, the wind picked up and the cloud cover changed the temperature by nearly 10 degrees. Drivers kept complaining that the grip just disappeared from one lap to the next. Even McLaren, who looked strong overall, had to fight the conditions constantly. But for Verstappen and Hamilton, it felt like they were wrestling the car instead of driving it. Now, here's where things get interesting. Verstappen's frustration wasn't just emotional. Red Bull made a deliberate choice to test an extreme setup split between him and Perez. They wanted to see if a low downforce configuration could bring an advantage for the sprint and the main race. But in Brazil, with bumps and constant elevation changes, that's a dangerous gamble. It looks like they bet wrong, and Verstappen knew it immediately. I have to ask you, do you think Red Bull made a huge mistake with Verstappen's setup this weekend? Was it just bad luck with the changing weather, or did they outsmart themselves? Drop your opinion in the comments. I really want to see what you think. And hey, if you love following these F1 moments in real time, the drama, the setups, the unexpected frustrations, make sure to subscribe to Fast News F1 and help us reach our goal of 2,000 subscribers. Your support means a lot and keeps these videos coming every race weekend. Also, hit the like button if you think Verstappen's anger was totally justified. Because honestly, I can't blame the guy this time. Now, with Red Bull under pressure and Mercedes still searching for answers, you'd think Ferrari would seize the moment, right? Well, not exactly. In fact, their Friday in Brazil might have been the most confusing of all. Let's break down Ferrari's disaster and how their choices ended up hurting not just Leclerc, but also Hamilton. If you thought Red Bull's day was bad, Ferrari somehow managed to outdo them in chaos. Seriously, their Friday at Interlagos looked like a masterclass in how to confuse your own drivers. Everything that could go wrong did. And by the end of sprint qualifying, you could hear the frustration echoing from the Ferrari garage. Let's start with the setup decisions. Ferrari went into the weekend unsure whether to run a high downforce or low downforce configuration. The problem? Interlagos isn't a track where you can afford to get that balance wrong. Too much wing, and you lose straight line speed. Too little, and you destroy your tyres through the middle sector. Leclerc and Sainz reportedly tested two very different setups, but instead of getting clear data, they ended up with two unhappy drivers. Leclerc's car, in particular, looked like it was on ice. He complained all session long about the rear instability. Every time he hit the throttle out of turn 10, the rear end snapped away. That's exactly what led to his spin in sprint qualifying. The Monegasque lost control mid-corner, the car looped around, and boom, yellow flags. Not only did it ruin his lap, it also wrecked everyone else's final runs, including Hamilton's. That one spin created a ripple effect that Ferrari definitely didn't plan for. As soon as Leclerc spun, Hamilton, who was on a personal best, had to lift off for safety. Mercedes was furious because Lewis had finally hooked up a solid lap. But the bigger issue was the confusion over how Ferrari got themselves into that mess to begin with. Reports from inside the team suggested that they didn't fully agree on tyre pressures or aero balance before sending the cars out, and when the temperature dropped, their chosen setup completely fell apart. Carlos Sainz, meanwhile, was just as baffled. His car was suffering from understeer through the high-speed corners, and when he tried to push harder, he overheated the front tyres. Ferrari's communication over the radio was tense, short, clipped, and frustrated. At one point, Sainz asked if the team wanted him to cool the tyres or push again, and they didn't even have a clear answer. That's not something you want to hear from a team that's supposed to be fighting at the front. And let's talk about the bigger picture. This isn't the first time Ferrari's been caught out by setup indecision. It's been a recurring theme all season. One weekend they're quick on Friday and lost on Sunday, the next they're dominant in practice and nowhere in qualifying. It's like they can't find a baseline setup that actually works across conditions. At Interlagos, it bit them again, and in a sprint weekend with only one practice session, that's catastrophic. What makes it worse is that Ferrari should have looked strong here. The car has good straight line performance, and Leclerc's driving style suits the flowing corners of Brazil. But once again, internal confusion overshadowed potential. Even Leclerc sounded drained in interviews. You could tell he was trying not to say too much, but he clearly wasn't happy with how the team handled the session. Now, what about the aftermath? The FIA stewards reviewed the yellow flag situation, but in the end, no grid penalties were handed out. Still, both Ferrari and Mercedes had to adjust their plans. Ferrari went back to the garage to analyse tyre wear and aero data late into the night, trying to figure out if they could claw back performance before the sprint. But with Parc Fermé rules limiting what can be changed, there's only so much they can do. So, here's my question for you. What do you think was Ferrari's biggest mistake today? Was it the risky setup call, the lack of clear communication, or just plain bad luck with Leclerc's spin? Drop your thoughts below. I'll be checking the comments to see which answer gets the most support. And hey, if you're new here and enjoy seeing how these behind-the-scenes moments shape the race weekend, subscribe to Fast News F1 and turn on notifications so you don't miss tomorrow's sprint breakdown. Your subscription helps us grow and reach our next goal of 2,000 subscribers, and it really makes a difference. Now, while Ferrari was busy tripping over themselves, another team quietly made headlines for a completely different reason. Aston Martin, massive 9/10 shakeup that's got the whole paddock talking. Yeah, I'm talking about Aston Martin. And at the centre of it all, Adrian Newey. While Red Bull and Ferrari were busy trying to survive a wild Friday in Brazil, all eyes suddenly shifted to Aston Martin. And for good reason. Behind the scenes, the team has quietly gone through a serious shakeup, one that might just redefine their entire future in Formula One. And guess who's right in the middle of it? Adrian Newey. Now this all caught the whole paddock by surprise. Over the past few weeks, rumours have been swirling about big internal changes at Aston Martin, staff movements, new structures, and some high-level exits. But what's really sparked interest is Newey's deeper involvement. Remember, Aston Martin has been in the process of rebuilding its technical department ever since Dan Fallows came over from Red Bull. But now we're hearing whispers that Newey himself is actively consulting on development philosophies for 2025 and beyond. That's huge, because we're talking about one of the greatest technical minds in F1 history, the man behind dominant cars at Williams, McLaren, and Red Bull. If he's guiding Aston Martin's direction, even partially, that could completely change their trajectory. But it's not all smooth sailing. Reports suggest that his influence has also led to a few internal conflicts. Some staff were let go as part of what insiders are calling a Newey overhaul. Essentially, he wants things done his way, and when that happens, teams tend to change fast. Fernando Alonso, of course, finds himself right in the middle of this chaos. He's had moments this season where Aston Martin looked competitive, but lately, the car just hasn't been there. So, you can imagine how he feels watching all these changes unfold. On the one hand, Alonso is excited. He's a huge admirer of Newey's work. But on the other, he's probably wondering if the team can stay stable enough to deliver results while all this restructuring happens. You could see his body language in Brazil, calm, but clearly waiting to see how this plays out. And the timing of all this? Honestly, it couldn't be more dramatic. The team's overhauling its structure just weeks before the 2025 car design is locked in. That's a massive gamble. Normally, you'd expect stability during such a critical phase, but Aston seems to be betting everything on a big reset. They're trying to correct the technical direction that's seen them fade from podium contenders to midfield runners. Let's not forget, Aston Martin started this era with one of the most promising cars in 2023. Alonso was flying early in the season, consistently finishing on the podium. But ever since mid-2023, their upgrades have backfired more often than they've worked. Each time they brought new parts, they lost performance instead of gaining it. That's exactly the kind of problem Newey is known for fixing. He simplifies complex aero concepts and focuses on how the car behaves dynamically, not just in simulations. If anyone can steer them back on course, it's him. But here's the twist. We still don't know how much control he'll really have. Some insiders claim Newey's role is purely advisory, while others say he's quietly shaping the 2026 car project, especially with the new regulations on the horizon. Either way, this is a defining moment for Aston Martin. They're not just tweaking a few things, they're rebuilding their DNA. So, what does all this mean for Alonso and the rest of the team in Brazil? Short term, not much will change this weekend. The car you see on track is still the same one that struggled for consistency all season. But the tension inside the team is real. Mechanics, engineers, and strategists all know that big changes are coming, and when that happens, people start racing to prove they deserve to stay. It creates pressure, and you can feel it in the garage. I want to know what you think. Do you believe Adrian Newey's involvement will actually help Aston Martin turn things around next season? Or is this just another case of too much change, too fast? Drop your answer in the comments below. I'll feature the best takes in the next video. And of course, if you're enjoying this deep dive into the real stories behind the race weekend, make sure to subscribe to Fast News F1 and turn on the notification bell. Your subscription helps us keep the channel growing. We're aiming for 2,000 subscribers, and with your help, we'll get there soon. Now, speaking of changes, there's another storm brewing. this time between the drivers and the FIA. Complaints about regulations, calls for format changes, and frustration over inconsistent rulings are reaching a boiling point. Just when you thought the on-track chaos was enough, the drama behind the scenes kicked into overdrive. Drivers are fed up, and they're not shy about saying it anymore. Between confusing race control calls, inconsistent penalties, and talk of shaking up F1's format again, the FIA has managed to find itself right in the middle of another controversy. Let's start with Lewis Hamilton. After Friday's session, he didn't hold back. He called out the FIA for what he described as a lack of clarity when it comes to enforcing rules, especially during qualifying. The yellow flag situation caused by Leclerc's spin was the perfect example. Hamilton slowed down like he should, but others didn't seem to lose as much time. And yet, there was no clear explanation. He basically said that the FIA needs to get its act together because the drivers are tired of not knowing what's allowed and what isn't from one weekend to the next. And honestly, he's not wrong. This has been a recurring theme all season. Track limits, penalties, restarts. The consistency just hasn't been there. Fans see it, teams see it, and now even the drivers are speaking out more publicly. George Russell echoed Hamilton's frustration, saying he's pushing for clearer rulebooks and standardized enforcement. He even mentioned in a press conference that it's not about who you are or what team you're in. The same incident should always have the same outcome. That's a powerful statement, and it's putting pressure on the FIA to make real changes. Now, while that fire is burning, Formula One itself is throwing gasoline on it by experimenting with new ideas for race weekends. There are talks about mandatory two-stop races, extended sprint sessions, and even shorter race formats to improve show value. Some of these ideas have support, but many drivers think it's too much too fast. Verstappen, for example, said he's not a fan of trying to make F1 into a constant experiment and that the sport should focus more on improving the fundamentals, like closer racing and better stewarding, instead of gimmicks. There's even been internal debate about whether sprint weekends should allow full setup changes between Friday and Saturday, rather than locking the cars under parc fermé rules. Teams like McLaren and Mercedes are in favour of that because it gives engineers a chance to fix mistakes. But purists argue it ruins the spirit of F1, that the best teams should get it right the first time. It's a classic Formula One standoff, innovation versus tradition. And fans, they're split right down the middle. Some love the added unpredictability that sprints bring. Others think it's just too much confusion packed into a single weekend. You can feel that tension everywhere, between drivers, teams, fans, and the FIA itself. It's like everyone agrees F1 needs to evolve, but no one can agree on how. But here's the thing. Change is coming whether anyone likes it or not. The FIA and Formula One management are already testing new rule packages for 2026. Those include lighter cars, simplified aerodynamics, and a push for more sustainable fuels. That's a good step, but in the short term, the sport desperately needs more consistency and better communication. Because right now, the frustration from both the drivers and the fans is boiling over. So let me throw this one to you. Would you support mandatory two-stop races in Formula One? Or should the sport stop tinkering and just focus on enforcing the rules properly? Drop your thoughts below. I want to see where you stand on this one. And if you're enjoying these kinds of breakdowns, not just the racing, but the politics and drama that make F1 what it is, make sure to subscribe to Fast News F1 and hit that notification bell. Your subscription helps us keep producing these deep dive videos and gets us one step closer to our goal of 2,000 subscribers. Plus, don't forget to comment yes if you think the FIA needs more transparency. I'll feature the best answers in our next recap. Now, all this off-track tension sets the stage perfectly for what's coming next. Because on the track, the battle is about to explode. McLaren's on fire, the weather forecast looks wild, and Verstappen's ready to fight back. Let's talk about what to expect in the sprint and how the rain could change everything. By now you can see the picture. The sprint isn't just another session, it's a pressure cooker, and right now, McLaren look like they've got the momentum to make the most of it. Lando Norris put together a near-perfect day, and Oscar Piastri backed him up with consistent pace, which means McLaren arrive at the sprint with both confidence and options. That pair have shown they can extract grip when the track is tricky, and that matters a lot if the forecasted rain shows up. Rain tends to mix up the order and bring driver skill further into play, and this year McLaren have looked unusually composed in changeable conditions. So if the heavens open, they could turn a strong qualifying into a big points haul. But don't count Verstappen out. Even when his car is off the boil, he has a knack for clawing back places in chaotic races, and Red Bull will throw everything at fixing the balance between now and the sprint. Remember, Parc Fermé reopens after the sprint in most formats, which means teams can make substantial changes for the main race, so a poor sprint result doesn't necessarily doom your Sunday if the engineers can find a setup fix overnight. That said, the sprint itself has championship consequences. Big points on a short, sharp session can shift momentum, and with Verstappen already having complained about an undrivable car, a bad sprint would put him on the back foot going into Sunday. Then there's Kimi Antonelli. His surprise speed this weekend is a reminder that rookies can explode onto the scene in sprints, and his performance will force teams to re-evaluate how they judge young talent under pressure. From a strategic standpoint, watch the tyre game. If it rains, intermediates and timely pit choices will beat pure one-lap pace every time. If it stays dry but cool, you'll see teams gamble on more downforce to handle the middle sector deficits we saw from several cars. So who benefits most? McLaren are clear short-term favourites for a clean sprint, Verstappen needs a comeback, and Ferrari must find clarity fast or they'll be left scrambling. Now I want to hear from you. Who do you think will master the sprint? Norris, Piastri, or Verstappen? Type the name in the comments and tell me why in one line. Also vote quick. Rain or shine? Will Norris stay on top? Comment rain or shine. If you've been enjoying these breakdowns and want more sprint and race reaction delivered fast, please subscribe to Fast News F1 and hit the notification bell. We're pushing to 2,000 subscribers, and every new subscriber helps us cover more races and more inside stories. Hit like if you think we'll see chaos in the sprint and drop a short prediction below. I'll read the best ones in the next video. That wraps up our weekend preview, McLaren's momentum.